In the heart of 1700s, Ghana, within the powerful Ashanti kingdom, a royal princess falls in love with a humble goldsmith. Their secret romance defies the strict customs and boundaries of the kingdom, as the princess' union with a commoner would disgrace her bloodline. When the lovers decide to elope, their escape is tragically foiled. What follows is a tale of forbidden love, betrayal, and the collision of personal desires with royal duty. Their fates, sealed by the kingdom's traditions, create a gripping story of passion, defiance, and heartbreak. The narrative explores themes of class, loyalty, and the destructive consequences of defying tradition in a time when honor and bloodlines were everything. A Forbidden Love in the Ashanti Kingdom is a heart-wrenching historical drama set in 1700s Ghana. It tells the story of Princess Afia, a royal daughter bound by duty, and Kwame, a humble goldsmith. Their forbidden love defies all odds, threatening to tear apart the kingdom's royal bloodline. This compelling narrative explores the clash between personal desires and the rigid traditions of an ancient African kingdom. The tragic fate of the lovers serves as a timeless reminder of the consequences of love, betrayal, and defiance. The Ashanti Kingdom, once known for its great wealth and power, lay in the heart of 1700s Ghana. The kingdom was resplendent, its golden treasures scattered in royal palaces, its mighty warriors revered, and its rulers respected. In the royal court, where tradition ruled, Princess Afia, the daughter of King Osi, stood poised to marry a powerful prince, chosen for political alliance rather than love. As a princess, Afia's life was confined to the gilded walls of her father's palace, her every movement scrutinized, her future predetermined. Yet beneath the royal exterior, Afia was restless. Afia's world was one of constant expectation. The palace corridors, with their intricate carvings and stunning gold decor, seemed to close in on her. Every decision was made for her, every moment in the public eye an act. She spent her days attending royal functions, receiving diplomatic guests, and preparing for the day when she would marry Prince Kwaku, a nobleman whose reputation in politics far exceeded any affection she held for him. Despite her status, Afia felt empty. She was not a princess of dreams and love. She was a princess of obligation. Then she met him. Kwame was a goldsmith, known in the bustling markets of Kumasi for his incredible craftsmanship. His hands, weathered from years of shaping gold into intricate ornaments, were skilled in the art of creation. Kwame had no interest in royalty or the politics of the kingdom. His world was one of simple beauty, crafting jewelry that spoke of both the earth's richness and the soul's deepest emotions. Kwame was a commoner, and yet he carried himself with a quiet pride that set him apart from others. Their first encounter was unplanned. Afia, seeking an escape from the pressures of her royal life, wandered through the market disguised as a commoner. She found herself drawn to Kwame's stall, where gold rings, necklaces, and beads shimmered in the sun. There she saw him, working intently, his focus so intense that he didn't notice her approach. "Your work is beautiful," she said, her voice soft and hesitant. She was not used to speaking so freely, without the burden of royal formality. Kwame looked up, his expression unreadable. For a moment their gazes locked, and Afia felt a spark, a connection that neither of them could have anticipated. Kwame, though caught off guard by the princess's sudden appearance, couldn't help but admire her. Though he knew who she was, he kept his words measured. "The gold reflects the light," "But it is the hands that shape it that give it meaning," he replied. Afia smiled, the words striking a chord deep within her. For the first time she felt seen, not as a princess, but as a person. They spoke for a few more minutes before Afia, reluctant to part from this moment of freedom, excused herself and left. But she would return. The days that followed were filled with tension and anticipation. Afia found herself drawn back to the market, seeking the company of the goldsmith who had shown her a glimpse of what life could be outside the chains of royalty. She disguised herself in plain clothes, careful not to attract attention, yet each time she met Kwame, the pull between them grew stronger. Their conversations evolved. No longer were they just about jewelry and gold. They spoke of life, dreams, and desires. Kwame shared his thoughts on the rigid social structure of the kingdom, the way the wealthy lived in luxury while the common people toiled for mere survival. Afia listened, her heart stirred by the rawness of his words. In return, she spoke of her royal duties, the burden of her family's expectations, and the weight of being trapped in a life that wasn't hers. One night, as the full moon bathed the kingdom in a silvery light, they met again at the edge of the royal gardens, far from prying eyes. The air was cool, and the scent of jasmine lingered in the breeze. "We are so different, you and I," Afia whispered, her voice low, almost fearful. "But when I am with you, I feel free." Kwame took a step closer, his eyes soft but filled with an undeniable yearning. "Perhaps we are different in many ways," he said, "but sometimes the heart does not recognize the boundaries set by others. It follows where it must." Afia felt a pang of longing. She had never known such intimacy, such closeness. It was intoxicating. She could hear the drums of the royal court in the distance, the sound of a world she was bound to, but it felt so distant in this moment. Here, in the presence of a man who was nothing but a goldsmith, she felt a sense of peace she had never known. "We cannot keep meeting like this," Afia said, a hint of sadness in her voice. "If anyone were to find out—" "I know," Kwame replied quietly, "but I cannot help how I feel. I've never known love like this." Their hands brushed, and in that fleeting moment, a promise was made between them, one they both knew could never be fulfilled in the world they lived in. As the weeks passed, the relationship between Afia and Kwame deepened. They could no longer deny the strength of their feelings for each other. Every stolen moment was precious, but the reality of their situation hung over them like a storm cloud. Afia knew that her marriage to Prince Kwaku was inevitable, and with it, the complete end of any hope she had for a life with Kwame. One evening, after a particularly emotional conversation about their future, Kwame proposed a daring plan. "We could leave this place," he suggested, his voice almost a whisper. "Go far away to the village of Nasuta, where no one knows us. You can be free. We can be together." Afia's heart raced at the thought. The idea of escaping, of leaving the constraints of the palace behind, was both thrilling and terrifying. She knew that it would mean abandoning her royal status, her family, and everything she had ever known. But the prospect of living her life with Kwame was a temptation too great to resist. "I can't imagine life without you," Afia admitted, her voice trembling with emotion. "But the risk, if we're caught—" "We will be careful," Kwame reassured her. "We will leave at night when the palace is quiet. No one will know. We will disappear." But even as they spoke of freedom, Afia's mind raced. The consequences of their actions were unimaginable. Her father, the king, would never forgive her. The kingdom's laws were strict. Intermarriage between royals and commoners was considered a great dishonor. It could destroy both their lives. Yet the more Afia thought about it, the more the idea consumed her. She could not bear the thought of living a life of duty and loneliness. She had chosen love, and now she was willing to risk everything for it. As the night of their planned escape drew closer, the air grew thick with tension. Afia's every move was shadowed by the ever-watchful eyes of the palace guards. She knew the risks of being discovered, but she had convinced herself that their love was worth it. She had made up her mind to leave, to break free from the confines of royalty and live a life of true freedom with Kwame. But someone was watching. The palace had many eyes, some loyal, and others far less so. One such eye belonged to Kofi, a palace official who had long coveted Afia's position as heir to the throne. Envious of her beauty, grace, and the power she held, Kofi had long been suspicious of her late-night excursions to the market and her secretive meetings with the common goldsmith. It wasn't long before Kofi's suspicions were confirmed. One evening, as Afia and Kwame exchanged a quiet kiss beneath the moonlit sky, Kofi followed them from the shadows, memorizing the path they took. His eyes gleamed with malicious intent. He saw an opportunity to destroy the princess and further his own ambitions. By the time Afia and Kwame were ready to flee, their plans had already been betrayed. Kofi had informed the royal court, and a small army of guards was waiting to intercept them before they could leave the city. The betrayal was swift, ruthless, and devastating. Afia and Kwame were dragged before the king in a public trial, their fate hanging in the balance. The court was filled with murmurs of disbelief. To see the beloved princess standing in front of her father, accused of such a grave transgression, was nothing short of scandalous. King Osi was furious, his face a mask of rage. How could you disgrace our bloodline so? How could you throw away everything for a commoner? His voice boomed across the courtroom, striking fear into those who watched. Afia, her head held high, looked her father in the eye. I did not choose to fall in love with Kwame. It was not my choice, but I refuse to deny what is true in my heart. I love him. The court gasped and whispers filled the air. The king's fury only intensified. You are a princess. You belong to this kingdom, to its people. You are not a commoner, and you will not marry one. Kwame stood beside her, his demeanor calm, yet resolute. I love her, Your Majesty. I would have given everything to see her happy. But despite their declarations of love, the verdict was clear. Afia was to be confined to the royal palace for the rest of her days, isolated from the world. Kwame, on the other hand, was sentenced to death for his defiance of royal authority. The decision had been made. Afia, the royal princess, would live the rest of her life in seclusion, while Kwame, the goldsmith she loved, would face the death penalty for his defiance. The royal court had already made its verdict clear, and the weight of the kingdom's law was final. Afia was led back to her chambers, a cold, distant place she had once called her home. Her heart was heavy with grief as she walked through the halls that were meant to offer comfort, but now felt like chains. She could hear the whispers of the palace staff, the shocked murmurs of those who had witnessed the trial. Their glances were filled with a mixture of sympathy and fear. Sympathy for the princess, but fear for the repercussions of her actions. She had shattered the expectations of an entire kingdom. As the hours passed, Afia could do nothing but wait. Her mind raced with thoughts of Kwame, his face filled with both love and sorrow as he stood by her in court. The love they shared was pure, but it had torn through everything she had known. She could still feel the warmth of his hand in hers, the touch of someone who had truly understood her, unlike anyone else in her life. Suddenly, a soft knock on her chamber door brought her out of her thoughts. It was one of her trusted servants, the same one who had warned her against going down this path. She entered quietly, her eyes filled with concern. "Princess," the servant began, her voice hesitant. "They are preparing Kwame for his execution." Her words were sharp, like a knife to Afia's chest. "I thought you might want to say goodbye." The words hung in the air as Afia felt her chest tighten. She didn't need to think twice. She knew she had to see him one last time. Without a word, Afia stood and left her chambers, her heart pounding in her chest. The guards had been instructed to escort her to the execution ground, and the walk to the square felt like the longest of her life. The cold stone beneath her feet felt heavier with every step. When they arrived, the sight of Kwame was almost too much to bear. He stood, hands bound, his head held high. His golden eyes met hers, and for a moment the world around them seemed to fall away. There were no royal duties, no king, no kingdom. There was only the two of them. Afia ran to him, but the guards quickly pulled her back. "No, Your Highness," one of them shouted, his voice stern. "Kwame," Afia cried, her voice breaking. "I couldn't stop it. I couldn't change anything." Kwame's expression softened, and he managed a faint smile, despite the grim reality of the situation. "Afia, it was never about the kingdom. It was about us. You gave me a love I never knew I needed." His voice was filled with raw emotion, and for a moment Afia could see the depth of his feelings. "I will love you always, no matter where I am," he whispered. "You must live. Live for both of us." Afia's tears fell freely as she was pulled away from him, forced to watch as the executioners prepared to carry out the sentence. In that moment, a piece of her heart died with him. In the days that followed, the kingdom was left in a state of mourning and turmoil. The execution of a commoner at the hands of the royal family sent shockwaves through the streets of Kumasi and beyond. The once great Ashanti kingdom was now divided. Afia's fate was sealed within the walls of the palace, where she was isolated from the rest of the world. The king, furious at the defiance his daughter had shown, ordered that she be confined to a small, dimly lit chamber, far from the grandeur of her previous life. The lavish silk curtains and ornate furniture had been stripped away, leaving only the bare walls to surround her. Word of the princess's punishment spread throughout the kingdom. Some of the common folk, moved by the tragic love story of Afia and Kwame, began to rally for justice. They marched in the streets, chanting for the princess's release and for the end of the oppressive royal laws. Whispers of rebellion began to stir. The kingdom's nobility, however, remained steadfast in their loyalty to the crown, too fearful of the repercussions to speak out against the king. In her confinement, Afia had nothing but her thoughts. At night, she could hear the distant sounds of the protests outside the palace gates, the voices of those who had come to see her as a symbol of love, betrayal, and the oppressive system that kept them all in line. The months that followed were filled with loneliness and regret. Afia spent her days gazing out of the small window in her chamber, watching the kingdom she had once known from a distance. The memories of her love with Kwame haunted her at night, filling her dreams with visions of what could have been. She would close her eyes, and for just a fleeting moment, she could feel his warmth, his presence. Her heart longed for him, even in death. Years passed, and the once great Ashanti kingdom began to change. The unrest that had started as a whisper slowly grew into a movement, fueled by the memory of a love so pure it could not be denied. The commoners, emboldened by the tragic fate of the princess and the goldsmith, began to challenge the old ways. They sought equality, freedom from the rigid class system that had once divided them so mercilessly. But change was slow. The king, once a powerful and feared ruler, now found himself struggling to maintain control. His daughter's rebellion had inspired something he could not contain, an idea that the royal bloodline was no longer inviolable, that love could transcend the boundaries of class. of tradition. One day, Afia received a visitor. It was a young woman, a leader of the protest movement, who had heard of Afia's tragic love and wanted to offer her a glimmer of hope. "We remember your love for Kwame," she said. "You showed us that we can fight for something more, that we deserve more." Afia, now an older woman, looked out the window at the golden city of Kumasi. It had changed, yet in many ways, it was still the same. The wealth, the power, the division, it all remained. But for the first time in years, Afia could see a glimmer of possibility on the horizon. Her love for Kwame, their shared dream of a world where people were not bound by the dictates of royalty, was not in vain. The last scene is a powerful one. Afia, standing at the window of her chamber, looking out over the kingdom. The sun begins to set, casting a warm golden glow over the land. The sound of drums echoes in the distance, a symbol of a new dawn, a new era. In her heart, Afia knows that while her love with Kwame may have ended in tragedy, its legacy will live on. And as she watches the protests grow stronger, she whispers to herself, "Maybe, just maybe, love will change this kingdom."